Hello and welcome back to Telecare's online training. Today we will be looking at Unit 10, which is covering topics surrounding abuse. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. So Unit 10 specifically looks at domestic, childhood, and elder abuse. Some learning objectives for Unit 10 are that by the end of this section, you will have a basic understanding of types of abuse, the psychology of abuse, and where to get help. The content of this unit can be heavy and difficult for some individuals to review. Please take your time with this unit and reach out for support from a mentor or board member as needed. So abuse is often categorized in three main areas. We will speak generally of abuse and highlight the differences in each type. So in domestic abuse, domestic violence and emotional abuse are behaviors used by one person in a relationship to control the other. Partners may be married or not married, heterosexual or 2S LGBTQI+, living together, separated, or dating. Elder abuse. Any behavior by a family member or person providing care, formally or informally, which results in physical or mental harm or neglect of an elderly person. Child abuse. Any behavior by a person, formal or informal, which results in physical or mental harm or neglect of a child. This type of abuse can occur to other vulnerable populations as well, such as adults living with developmental disabilities. Abuse. When we hear the word abuse, we think of extreme physical harm, such as punching, hitting, or assault. Of course, this is abuse. However, abuse can also happen in much more subtle ways, such as financially, emotionally, environmentally, socially, and sexually. The following is a list of 6 types of abuse compiled by the Men in a Male Batterers Counseling Program. While they were speaking of their experience of domestic or spousal abuse, the types can carry across all areas. Physical. Any unwanted physical contact, kicking, punching, pulling, pushing, slapping, hitting, pulling hair, arm twisting, squeezing, choking, shooting, stabbing. Environmental. Locking someone in, taking phones, slamming doors, throwing objects, breaking things, excessive volume on electronics, harming pets, throwing out possessions or clothes. Social. Not taking responsibility for children, embarrassment in front of children, putting partner down, isolating from friends or supports, choosing others over their partner, using kids as weapons, change of personality one with others, treating partner as a slave. Financial, not spending money on special occasions, withholding household money, spending money foolishly beyond means, making all the financial decisions. Sexual, forcing sex, total lack of intimacy, sleeping around, forcing sexual acts, intimidation by knowledge or reputation, being rough, using sex as a basis for arguments, treating their partner as a sex object. Emotional, insulting, name-calling, intimidation, inappropriate jealousy, pressuring, manipulation, false accusations, lack of consideration for opinions, removing responsibilities, isolation, secrecy, yelling, verbal threats, mind games, degrading partner, brainwashing, not passing along messages, isolating, dominating, double standards, making threats about themselves. For example, if you leave, I will harm myself. Abuse defined. It is a noun, a corrupt practice or custom, improper or excessive use of treatment, language that condemns or vilifies, usually unjustly, intemperately, and angrily, and physical maltreatment. Domestic violence. When we speak of domestic violence, we generally speak about women being abused by their male partners. However, men also suffer from domestic abuse. It tends to go underreported by men, so accurate statistics are very hard to come by. As volunteers, we should always listen carefully to what a person tells us about abuse, whether it is by a male or female, young or old. All violence is unacceptable. Facts. Half of all women in Canada have experienced at least one incident of physical or sexual violence since the age of 16. About 80% of victims reported dating violence are women. Men and women in Canada are at equal risk of violent victimization, where men are far more likely to be assaulted by a stranger and women are more likely to be assaulted by someone they know. According to a large-scale 2005 Statistics Canada study, the likelihood of a man being a victim of violent abuse by his female partner is almost the same as it is for a woman. Women stay in abusive relationships often because the abuser has threatened to kill them, himself, or the children if they leave. On average, every 6 days, a woman in Canada is killed by her intimate partner. About half of all female murder victims in Canada are killed by a former or current intimate partner. By contrast, only 7% of male murder victims were killed by their intimate partners. The most dangerous time for an abused woman is when she attempts to leave her abuser, and girls are 4 times as likely as boys to be assaulted by a family member. Verbal and physical abuse. The verbal abuser rejects the partner's warmth and openness because these are the very qualities in which they fear in themselves. They do not recognize the pain that they are causing with repeated put-downs, denials, and insults. If the victim does confront the abuser, they will deny being abusive, causing the victim to question their own perception. In contrast, the physical abuser usually confuses their partner by admitting their abusive behaviors, apologizing, and then promising to never do it again, and then doing it again. The victim knows that the hurt is real, the scars and bruises are proof. They blame themselves for inviting the abuse by not being good enough or by doing something to bring on the abuse. Both types of abusers will excuse or minimize their actions with undying declarations of love. Since everyone wants to be loved, the victim is inclined to believe them. Why would they say it if they didn't mean it? Below are some common declarations of love from an abusive partner. When mixed in with the dynamics of abuse, these declarations can say so much more. So, no one would ever love you as much as I do. And what that communicates is that you're not lovable. I would never leave you, which communicates you will never get away from me. I would never do anything to hurt you, which communicates you make me have to hurt you. And I just want you to be happy, which communicates only I know how to make you happy. Awareness. More often, we will be speaking with a victim of abuse, whether they are ready to recognize or address the abuse or not. Often, a victim of abuse is not even aware that they are engaged in an abusive relationship. It can be a learned behavior. Think about your own family life. Was there something unique that your family did routinely, such as always having a family sit down dinner or attending church services weekly? Would you assume that every family in the world also engaged in these activities? Were you surprised to find that not all families are just like yours? If in your family love was always associated with pain, control, or withholding, then you may seek out the same kind of love naturally as you enter new relationships. Sometimes for the victim, there's also a sense of familiarity and comfort in an abusive relationship, which is why victims will often return to an abusive relationship or leaving one will unconsciously seek out another. Just as a fish doesn't know it's wet, often someone in an abusive relationship is unable to see the subtle markers of abuse. And moreover, if needs are being met, then there is no reason to question the relationship or the ways that their needs are being met. So that completes part 1. So a checklist for identifying emotional abuse. The checklist below is for information purposes only. Please remember that our own feelings, relationships, and circumstances are always changing. Identifying one or more issues on this list does not necessarily mean that one is abused or is an abuser. Understanding possibilities, other ways of living and loving, can help us to enhance all of our relationships, romantic, friends, and work. We would never go through the list with a caller or quiz them on their relationship. However, we will keep these things in mind and listen between the lines for clues that this caller is extending an invitation to explore deeper feelings and issues. So a question you can ask or explore is, are you isolated? Does your partner ridicule or insult people like you? Is your partner jealous of your friends, family, or even your pets? Does your partner intercept mail, phone calls, emails, or texts? Does your partner become angry suddenly or upset just prior to a social event that you have been looking forward to, thus dampening your own enthusiasm and enjoyment? Do you discourage friends contacting you at home because your partner resents sharing your time? Do you have fewer contacts and activities with friends and family than before your relationship? Do you feel uneasy being with your partner and your friends at the same time? Do you feel frightened or nervous of your partner when you are a few minutes late? A person who has many affirmative answers to the questions above could be in danger of becoming so isolated from the support and perspective of other people that eventually they won't be able to evaluate or recognize a dangerous relationship. Affirmative answers to many of the last four questions suggest that you have adapted so well to the isolation your partner has imposed that you have started isolating yourself. Is your attention monopolized by the abusive person? Do you feel you need approval from your partner for your clothing, opinions, and decisions? Do you feel overpowered by your partner's presence, whether or not they are with you? Do you speak carefully or avoid speaking so that you don't risk upsetting your partner? Do you time your activities to avoid being noticed by your partner? You often find yourself walking on eggshells. So if you have checked many answers in this group, one is focusing so much of their attention on their partner's opinions and reactions that they are at risk to lose sight of one's own rights, feelings, and desires. This monopolization of one's attention by their partner, in combination with isolation from other people, may lead one to excessive dependency on their partner. And does your partner claim to be all powerful? Does your partner claim to be exceptionally bright or knowledgeable or to have extraordinary power? Does your partner claim to be more aware of the ways of the world than you are? Does your partner claim to have friends or contacts who will report your activities when you are apart? Does your partner claim to always know the right way to do things and that you do not? If one selected yes to half of the questions above, one's partner may eventually persuade one to believe that they are omnipotent or at least greatly superior, and that one is not competent to make their own decisions. Does your partner enforce trivial demands? Does your partner insist that activities take place in precise ways or at designated times? Does your partner interrupt your work or other things that are important to you to get their needs met? Does your partner demand that you only wear approved clothing, jewelry, makeup, etc.? Does your partner insist that you perform menial services or inspect your work and then make hypercritical comments? Does your partner demand detailed reports of all activities? If one's partner enforces trivial demands, one may feel either like a servant or an incompetent child. One will focus on the narrow mechanical tasks expected and give up making one's own judgments regarding their value. Are you exhausted, debilitated, or dependent? Do you feel inadequate doing tasks that you used to do easily and well? Do you suffer from minor or major illnesses? Do you have feelings of dread? Do you feel that you couldn't manage your life without your partner? If one is feeling this way, it could be that the trivial demands of one's partner are wearing one down. You can encourage a caller to ask themselves how they feel when they are not with their partner. If this has not happened for a long time, it can be encouraged to get away for a few days and see how one feels when this pressure is off. Do you feel humiliated or degraded? Does your partner force you to do things that are against your moral or religious values? Does your partner ridicule the traits that you admire or value in yourself? Does your partner tell you that no one else would want you? Has your partner talked you into doing something and then made you feel guilty or ashamed about it? Does your partner continually ask you about real or imagined sexual or romantic incidents? Does your partner force you to apologize for things that you did not do? Does your partner control all of the finances, whether the money is a community fund or your own income? Does your partner call you names with negative sexual connotations? Does your partner flaunt relationships or flirt with others while with you? It seems as though Experiences such as those listed above would motivate a person to end a relationship, but this is often not so. People often stay involved because they are ashamed to face anyone else and they hope to fix the relationship, which would make the humiliation to have been for a good cause. Does your partner threaten you? Does your partner threaten to make public things that you have done or said in private? Does your partner threaten to leave you or divorce you whenever you disagree? Does your partner tell you that he will go crazy or kill himself or others if you withdraw your love? Does your alcoholic partner hint that they will go back to drinking if you do not do what they ask? Does your partner threaten to punish you or teach you a lesson if you do not behave? Does your partner threaten to take your money, debit card, car keys, or cell phone if you do not comply with their demands? Does your partner use body or facial expressions or noises to show extreme anger or loss of control in order to frighten you? Does being hit in the past make you fear it will happen again? Does your partner keep guns, knives, or other weapons close at hand? The use of power and control in this way makes it impossible to have a relationship of mutual respect and love. If one is confirmed yes to the last 4 questions, they could be in serious danger. Does your partner occasionally indulge your wishes? Just as you are thinking of separating after being abused or after being put down for no reason, does your partner suddenly pamper you with gifts and kindness, indulge with affection or special care? Does your partner suddenly do something that you have been requesting for a long time? Does your partner become unexpectedly more understanding and accepting of something than would normally cause them to get angry? Does your partner suddenly impress you with their exceptional sensitivity to your feelings and desires? This is the hook. These things may not happen often, but there is always the hope that they will happen again and that they are the expressions of the real character of your partner. These moments are what keep an abused person in the relationship. Does your partner do things that make you feel crazy? Does your partner suggest that you are crazy or stupid if you disagree with them? Does your partner apologize and say that the abuse is a sign of deep love and fear of losing your love? Does your partner insist that the two of you are in a battle against a world of enemies? After abuse, does your partner express so much sorrow, guilt, or self-hate that you become the one who is comforting your partner? Does your partner lie about insignificant things? Does your partner make contradictory demands? Does your partner contradict positive things others say about you or make negative comments about traits that you like about yourself? Do you distrust your feelings about your partner, yourself, or others? Do you feel ashamed of past deeds that once made you proud? Are you afraid that no one would like the real you? Do you believe that you are the only person who can save your partner from ruin, alcoholism, depression, insanity, or suicide, and yet you are the dependent one? Does your partner cause you to question long-term friendships? Are you confused between love and hate or right and wrong? Most of these questions indicate that the abuser is doing something to make the partner feel weak and sometimes engaging in gaslighting behavior. The last few questions show to what extent the abused is taking responsibility for the situation. Becoming involved with other people will help the abused to validate their sanity and worth. Is your partner emotionally distant or neglectful? Does your partner ignore you or grunt absentmindedly when you begin a conversation? Does your partner groan, complain, or ridicule you when you cry, worry, or ask for emotional support? Does your partner refuse to confide in you when they are worried, hurt, or afraid? Does your partner ignore your wish for sex or refuse to do what excites you or satisfies you? Does your partner make light of your triumphs, discourage your plans, and disparage your successes? Does your partner refuse to share their plans, dreams, or hopes for success? Does your partner ignore your need for help when you are sick, tired, or overscheduled? Have you given up asking your partner for companionship? Have you stopped asking for empathy or emotional support? Have you given up asking your partner for help when you are sick, tired, or in need? Have you stopped asking your partner about their plans, worries, or triumphs? Have you developed a habit of avoiding sex whenever possible, but enduring it as a tolerable routine when it is unavoidable? If many of these situations are prevalent in a relationship, the partner is psychologically unavailable and neglectful, which is also a form of abuse. Affirmative answers to the last 5 questions indicate that the neglect is being minimized, as this is all that can be expected from the relationship. Time spent with friends who pay attention, meaningful work, or leisure activities can help diminish the pain of neglect. And that completes part two. So, why are they calling Telecare? Often, Telecare is the first step when a person recognizes that something may be amiss. It is easier to explore difficult thoughts and feelings with an anonymous, non judgmental listener than with a friend or family member. Actually, looking up a number for an abused woman shelter or domestic abuse hotline would be admitting that the person they loved was being abusive and that they are probably to blame anyhow because they were asking for it or not good enough. We often hear the victim stating that they have no one else to talk to. Their friends and family have stopped listening because they have watched the abuse for so long and have watched their loved one return time and time again to the abusive relationship. We must be careful to remain non judgmental but supportive. It can take an abused person several calls, weeks, months, or even years before they are ready to address their situation. Once a caller is open to the idea that something in their relationship is broken, we may be able to offer suggestions such as a referral to a professional helper or to a local shelter. It is important as a telephone listener to understand what happens when we make a referral to another agency. It is dramatically more important in the case of domestic abuse. We must be completely aware of the pitfalls and dangers an abused person faces once they have decided to talk about and explore options to their relationship. It is the most dangerous time for an abused person when they are thinking about or attempting to leave their abuser. Caution. If you have come to the point that a caller is seeking more information about a shelter or domestic abuse hotline or considering leaving their partner, it is important to help them understand that this is a dangerous time and that they must be very cautious about making phone calls from the family phone, leaving information or phone numbers or websites open or around, or leaving any other clues that they might be thinking of leaving. What will happen if an abused person calls the local women's shelter or hotline? It is important to know and have faith in the professionals in our area who are trained to respond to an abused individual. They understand the dangers involved in living with and leaving an abusive partner and will never compromise the abused woman's safety. They will help the caller to prepare safety, including a safety plan if they are planning to leave their partner. They understand the difficulty and dynamics of an abusive relationship. They will not give up on the person or their relationship. Calling a shelter or hotline does not mean that you are expected to and must leave your partner immediately. They will give the support that someone needs and confidence as they work their way through the stages of the relationship. Everyone is on a budget. However, staff at shelters recognize the importance of family pets, that they can also be in danger and can also make arrangements. They can also advocate in family court, walk through the legal process with someone, help to find accommodation, jobs, etc., provide ongoing therapy and support groups, emergency transportation, and programs for children. Start talking and start to end the abuse. Referrals. So there are some referrals specifically for individuals experiencing domestic abuse and violence throughout the county of Simcoe, Ontario, Muskoka, and Canada. Child abuse. As a Telecare volunteer, we encounter child abuse in several different ways. One, a child who is being abused could call. Two, a person who is concerned that a child they know could be abused. Three, a caller is concerned that they may abuse their child. Four, a caller is living with a legacy of past childhood abuse. Child abuse is a new name for an old problem that has become more public over time. It was just before the turn of the century in 1900 that the labor movement adopted a slogan, a childhood for every child. It was a new idea. The farther back we go in history, the less respect there has been for children, the lower the level of care, and the more likely it was that children would be killed, abandoned, beaten, terrorized, or abused. Children were bought and sold, undesirable children were killed, and children were the victims in an economic and social system that created angry and powerless men and women. The concepts of inequality of children are expressed in our nursery rhymes, such as there was an old lady who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do, so she gave them some broth without any bread and whipped them all soundly and sent them to bed. The swaddling of infants began in these ages. A child was wrapped so tightly in cloths that they could not move, became extremely passive, their breathing slowed, they cried less, slept more, and were generally withdrawn and inert. In this manner, they could be left for hours without concern. The first legal challenge to the absolute rights of parents over their children occurred in New York City in 1874, resulting in the creation of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Canada's first Children's Aid Society was formed in Toronto in 1891. Child abuse entails the betrayal of a caregiver's position of trust and authority over a child. It involves the physical, psychological, social, emotional, or sexual mistreatment of a child, whereby the survival, safety, self esteem, growth, and development of the person are threatened. It can take many forms, such as neglect, which is the sustained deprivation of food, clothing, hygiene, shelter, and needed care so as to cause or potentially cause physical, emotional development, or psychological harm. Physical abuse. This includes assault, such as hitting, kicking, biting, thrilling, burning, or poisoning that cause or could cause physical injury, as well as behaviors or omissions that cause or could cause physical injury to a child. Sexual abuse. Any sexual exploitation of a child, whether considered consented to or not. It includes the touching of a sexual nature or any behavior of a sexual nature towards a child. Emotional abuse. Emotional attacks or omissions that cause or could cause serious emotional injury, including the behavior of parents or guardians who do not take an interest in their child, for example, not talking with or hugging their child, or being emotionally unavailable to their child. This could also include repeated threats, confinement, exposure to violence, ongoing humiliation, and ridicule, and attacks on a child's fundamental sense of self. Children who have been victimized may often exhibit these behaviors, such as hyperactivity, depression, changes in eating habits, changes in sleep habits, difficulty at bathing or bedtime, regression in behaviors, bedwetting, self-destructive behaviors, increase in accidents, moodiness, talking what seems like nonsense, bad dreams, social difficulties, falling behind in school, violent play with toys, hurting animals, and lying. Children who witness the assault of their mothers have a comparable level of problems to children who are abused themselves. And this is, in fact, considered being emotionally abused. Children living in violent homes suffer emotional abuse as a direct consequence of witnessing or being subject to violent behavior. Unborn children are also affected. 80% of beaten women are attacked while pregnant. Children from violent homes learn by example that it is all right to hit, that anger justifies violence. They learn that people who love you can hit you. Abused children don't know anything different, so at first they accept it. Then they experience confusion and begin to wonder if they could have done anything. So imagine living in a home where your parent or caregiver harms the other parent or caregiver and threatens to kill them. This or threatens to harm themselves, calls the other parent or caregiver nasty names, destroys um, the other parent or caregiver's precious possessions, throws things around in fits of rage, believes the other caregiver or parent deserves to be hit, um, tells you or the child that the other parent or caregiver is a bad parent, is angry a good deal of the time, sometimes cries because they have hurt the other parent or caregiver, says they cannot control themselves, promises that they will never hurt the child or the other parent or caregiver again, and then they do. On the flip side, imagine growing up in a home where your parent or caregiver feels terrified of the other parent, tries to escape, screams for help, creeps around the house so that the other parent or caregiver won't get mad, picks up weapons to protect oneself, forgives the parent or caregiver when they cry, thinks that they deserve to be harmed, makes excuses for the other parent, feels depressed and cries a good deal of the time, gets furious at the other parent or caregiver, and then takes it out on you or the child, promises to leave the other parent or caregiver if they ever hit again, and then they do not leave. Children who are abused. As a result, children who are abused have very low self esteem, may feel insecure, unworthy, or ashamed. They tend to develop psychosomatic reactions or may escape through drugs, promiscuity, or running away. To report child abuse, the Child and Family Services Act, CFSA, recognizes that each of us has a responsibility for the welfare of children. We all share a responsibility to protect children from harm. This includes situations where children are abused or neglected in their own homes. Ontario's Child and Family Services Act provides for protection for children. Section 72 of the Act states that the public, including professionals who work with children, must promptly report any suspicions that a child is or may be in need of protection to the Children's Aid Society. The Act defines the phrase child in need of protection and explains what must be reported to the CAS. It includes physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, neglect, and risk of harm. A professional must report that a child is or may be in need of protection, even when the information is otherwise confidential or privileged. This duty overrides any other provincial statutes and specifically overrides any provisions that would otherwise prohibit someone from making a disclosure. Only lawyers may not divulge privileged information about their clients. If a caller discloses any information concerning the abuse of a child, we must record any and all information that we are given, particularly regarding the identity of the caller or the victim, including information such as child's school, neighborhood landmarks, and names of siblings or friends. Any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, could be the one small puzzle piece for the authorities to stop the abuse. Once the call is complete, immediately notify the executive director, the chair, or any other member of the board of Telecare's distress line. They will take appropriate action with the Children's Aid Society. As a distress line, we have a responsibility to meet the needs of our callers. A caller who is a perpetrator or is in fear of harming a child may be calling for help, and referral services can be offered. If a caller is a third party, it is their responsibility to call CAS. Encourage them to do so and remind them that CAS does not have call display and their call can be anonymous. The Children's Aid Society of Simcoe County provides service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A past history of childhood abuse. A history of being abused sexually is often a root cause of emotional and psychological difficulties later in life. Abuse by a parent can lead to severe issues with anxiety, self-esteem, anger, depression, and blocks to intimacy. Most people who are abused as children manage to function as adults, but maintaining a sense of peace and happiness can be very challenging. Often, memories arise most dramatically when people who were abused begin to form intimate relationships. Some of our callers have indicated that they have experienced abuse, whether sexual, physical, or emotional, in their childhood. This does not mean that this is the basis of their call today. However, it can be the root cause of loneliness, depression, or anxiety, which leads them to call. Childhood sexual abuse is not usually committed by a stranger, rather by a trusted adult, parent, or caregiver. This can cause a great sense of confusion, betrayal, and guilt. Young victims do not always immediately experience pain or fear during their abuse and often feel guilt for having pleasurable feelings, for having trusted the adult, or for having gotten the person in trouble by revealing the abuse. Abusers are often lie, threaten, or reward their victims, leading to more emotional trauma. If we are uncomfortable with the caller's expression of thoughts and feelings, we might be tempted to shoo the past away, advise them to move on, to let go of it, etc. While letting go and finding forgiveness is a positive goal, the caller must first deal with their feelings, whether it be anger, grief, guilt, anxiety, or other painful emotions resulting from the abuse before they can try to move on. As always, it is best to follow the caller's lead in the conversation. Do not ask for a play-by-play. Do not ask for details. Likewise, if it is helpful for the caller to talk about the abuse, then allow it within the comfortable limits set out in Unit 4. Professional therapy can help with victims of past abuse by increasing insight into their feelings, clarifying values, and helping with anger management and communication skills. Trained therapists can help to uncover and work through the shame and guilt. Many of our callers have experience with therapy of some sort. Some are still engaged in helpful therapy, and some have given up hope of ever finding the right fit for them. We must understand that we are not trained therapists, that the problems and issues facing many of our callers are far beyond our comprehension, and we are not here to fix them, but to simply be with them, where we are always accepting and compassionate. Human trafficking. The following slides provide information and insight into what human trafficking is and how it happens. Like abusers, traffickers prey upon and exploit vulnerable individuals for personal gain. So once again, if you're following along on a compatible device, you can pause this video and watch it on your other device. Otherwise, this will be linked in the caption of this video. And that completes part 3. So elder abuse. Elder abuse is an action by someone in a relationship of trust that results in harm or distress to an older person. Neglect is a lack of action by that person in a relationship of trust with the same result. Neglect is a lack of action. Neglect is a lack of action by that person in a relationship of trust with the same result. Commonly recognized types of elder abuse include physical, psychological, and financial. Often, more than one type of abuse occurs at the same time. Abuse can be a single incident or a repeated pattern of behavior. Facts. Between 2% and 10% of older adults are abused in some form. Those who assist abused older adults believe that the rate is closer to 10%. In 2010, 67% of incidents of family violence against seniors involved physical assaults, as opposed to 45% in non-family violence incidents. Based on police-reported data, nearly 2,800 seniors aged 65 years or older were the victim of family violence in 2010. Overall, seniors were the most at risk from friends and acquaintances, followed by family members and then strangers. For both sexes, grown children were the most common perpetrators of family violence, particularly when the violence was escalated to the point of killing the senior. There are 1.6 million older adults living in Ontario. Therefore, statistics indicate that there are between 32,000 and 160,000 older adults living in Ontario who are being abused in some fashion by someone they trust. The leading motives for family homicides of seniors were frustration, 32%, and the escalation of an argument, 26%. Financial gain was the leading motive in non-family homicides against seniors. Profile of a victim. Elder abuse can happen to any older adult. Despite common misconception, abuse happens to older adults who are mentally competent and do not require constant physical care. Elder abuse usually occurs in situations where the victim is dependent on the abuser in some way. While both men and women are victimized, the typical profile of a victim is over the age of 75, usually female, widowed, or single. Signs to watch for include progressive physical or mental impairment, increasingly dependent on abuser for physical or emotional needs, takes on the role of a child, is socially isolated, may have been an abusive parent, denies abuse, and is reluctant to report, and may have assets. The profile of an abuser is generally anyone in any income bracket, any education level, any ethnicity, um, who can become an abuser. However, the abuser seems to be predominantly middle aged and is usually the son or daughter of the victim or a neighbor or other relative. An abuser may exhibit some of these signs, such as experiencing stress due to financial problems, medical problems, marital conflict, substance abuse, or unemployment, may have low self esteem, may resent the role reversal with a parent, may be experiencing increasing demands of the caretaking role, may have impulse control issues, may have been abused as a child. When discussing elder abuse versus domestic violence or child abuse, the only true difference is the age of a victim. The types of abuse remain the same: physical, mental, emotional, environmental, financial, social, and neglect. There are some subtle differences in the causes and means of the abuse. Furthermore, often the indicators of elder abuse are quite subtle or not obvious or do not in and of themselves indicate abuse. Seniors often bruise more readily, and a bruise could be just a bruise. Missing items can be misplaced and not stolen. It takes careful scrutiny and investigation to determine if an older person is being neglected or abused. Do you know the signs of elder abuse? Signs include financial, such as large sums of money being taken from accounts, signatures on documents looking suspicious, sudden unexplained debt, sudden unexplained lack of funds for daily expenses, a sudden change in the will, sudden sale of home or other assets, personal belongings missing, and concern when talking about money, as well as increased isolation. Physical, unexplained, inconsistent reason for bruising, welts, swelling, lacerations, or fractured, repeated falls, internal injuries, rope burns, hypothermia, or grip marks. Sexual, including infections, pain, bruising, bleeding, in sensitive areas, inappropriate sexual comments by caregiver, rope marks, or signs of physical restraint. Emotional, low self-esteem, agitation, sleep disorders, withdrawal, resignation, tearfulness, hopelessness, fearfulness, significant weight changes, reduced visitors or outings, and deference to caregiver. Neglect, they appear emaciated, malnourished, or dehydrated, confused, inappropriately dressed, under or over medicated, with soiled clothes, linens, untreated sores. The home could be dirty or in a state of disrepair, smell of urine or feces. The senior is left alone without assistance when it is needed. Medical appointments are canceled regularly or are no-shows. So, reporters of elder abuse. Most often it is the healthcare provider, then a family member, other, or service provider. And often there is no voluntary reporting of abuse. Seniors may feel shame that a family member or someone that they trusted is abusing them, or feel concerned that by reporting they will get someone in trouble. They may fear retaliation or are concerned that if they report, they will be forced to leave their home. As a Telecare volunteer, it is our job to listen for the clues that might lead to knowledge of abuse, either from the senior or perhaps from a frazzled caregiver who could be unaware that they are acting abusively. It is important to ask the older person openly and directly if he or she is being abused or neglected. Being open, understanding, and non-judgmental can help seniors gain the confidence to talk freely. While there is no justification for any type of abuse, it is important to understand the factors that can precipitate elder abuse in order to be able to listen and explore options. Strained family relationships may worsen as an older person becomes more dependent. Social isolation from declining medical or mental health, loss of a spouse or friends, can be significant factors in the chance of an older person suffering abuse, as well as factors such as a caregiver's lack of knowledge regarding the aging process or their own duties, a caregiver's lack of knowledge of services or resources available and how to access them, psychological, physical impairments in the elderly, age, psychological, physical health of the caregiver, caregiver stress, the caregiver feeling pressured into the role, and pressure from other family members to do a good job. Poor family dynamics, such as the caregiver might have been abused by the elderly parent. Family issues such as substance abuse, unemployment or financial strain, social isolation of the caregiver and elder, family history of violence, a caregiver's refusal to accept or fear of their own aging, role reversals, changing roles, and role dissatisfaction in the elderly person or caregiver, refusal of elderly person or caregiver to accept help, lack of societal concern for the elderly, or general stereotyping of elders, inadequate social services, social planning, community support, and poverty. Reporters of elder abuse. As a telephone volunteer, we will not be able to see any of the signs of physical abuse, and it is important to be able to listen carefully for any indication that our caller is in some manner being abused or neglected. Be open to exploring some of the difficult and taboo subjects. Similarly, when talking to older adults, posing questions such as, is there anyone in your life who takes advantage of your good nature or mistreats you in any way, may pave the way for a disclosure of abuse or neglect. Some of the things we might hear and some possible responses are, it's always so cold in my room. Can you tell me why it is so cold? Is there a reason that you cannot adjust the thermostat? I can only talk for a few minutes. My son will be home soon. What will happen if you're still on the phone when he arrives home? I really miss going out to my knitting club. Can you tell me why you are unable to go anymore? I was supposed to go to the doctor's yesterday, but my daughter is so busy, I don't want to ask her to take me. How will your daughter feel to know that you've missed an important appointment? I just stay in my room all of the time now. I don't like going to the dining room for meals. Can you explain to me why you feel better staying in your room instead of socializing? There may be perfectly acceptable answers to any of these questions, and it is our responsibility to hear between the lines and to be open to exploring alternatives with our callers. Older adults are generally forthright if they believe that any information they offer will be kept in confidence and action will be taken only at their request. Asking the question validates the older adult's situation by communicating that abuse and neglect happens to other people, often enough that we would even think to ask. Respecting the adult's right to self-determination is the first step in shifting power and control back to someone who is being victimized. So some help and referrals. The Senior Safety Line provides information, referrals, and support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in over 150 languages. As well, there is the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, being the central agency in Canada that collects information and criminal intelligence on mass marketing fraud and other theft complaints. And some resources for further reading. All right, and that completes the content of That Should Save Unit 10. If you are following along on the app on another device, you can continue to the evaluation. Otherwise, that completes Unit 10, and we will see you next time for Unit 11 on the topic of self-care.